Chapter 14. The Game of Deceit. Very soon, a messenger from Varhana was sent to Surishila to communicate Ulkasur's invite for playing the game of chess with King Vajraveer. King Vajraveer, once again unacquainted of any anticipation for any trouble, accepted the request as an affable call from his old friend. It was the night before the evil duo had planned to appear on the land of the Surishila, when Ulkasur was trying to convince haughty Gajradhan to grip his anger tight in his fist and wait for the right moment to let it go blast, as Gajradhan could bear no patience to see the royal dignity falling to diminution. He was wholly certain that they would win the game, as he really was eager enough to illustrate his dominance and total contempt towards them. "Keep your calm, son. Let us sail like a duck. Show no movement under a steady movement, and have faith in my inherent element of divination, if you really expect any reward from this transaction. After all those intense ascetic penances and practices for endless years, I have been able to secure this boon from Ma Bhadrakali to never lose the game, but your undue rage may create an unnecessary intrusion in our chase, and I am sure you wouldn't want to feel her wrath for any of your follies." Gajradhan listened to him quietly. His eyes were steady to the horizon, while Ulkasur continued. "It's not far, unless I am far wrong. Let us be ready to cherish the wine of win, from I foresee the imminent doom." The very next day, cunning Ulkasur arrived in the kingdom with his hot-headed nephew. They walked past the passages of Surishila wearing quirky smirks on their devious faces. Vajraveer and Balakrishna gave them a warm welcome as always, by performing their vital rituals of welcoming their prestigious guests. They dined together and listened to the finest music performed by royal court singers. While all were engrossed rejoicing their social milieu filled with music and revelry, Gajradhan's eyes were constantly travelling across the arena, moving in all the corners, upon galleries, behind the beads drapings, and towards a huge round dais where a small bunch of young ladies were sitting and enjoying the court concert with the rest, while he was as if desperately looking for someone he would probably missing. It was obviously diagnosable who he was looking for. If he had to peer into Dame's bunch, for that matter, it could not be a man, of course. Whereas the one whom he was looking for was busy polishing her sword fighting skills in an enclosed wing near the stable behind the palace. The young woman was quick to pry the edged cutlass from the soldier's tough grip as she swiftly whipped around to clash the steel. She held the blade even, a perfect, undaunted horizon, always levelled with the nose, just as her father had dictated to her while her training was on. She was lightly armoured. The agony of her unyielding pain flashed with every strike of the sword and hammered the poor soldier, who was, though glad to see her fighting abilities, yet was afraid of an unforeseen threat to his own life. "I suppose you have done enough for the day, princess. You should rest now," said the hapless soldier. "It's been never enough for me," raged Madhavi with harder strikes. "It doesn't stop for me. It doesn't stop for me." Her sword gleamed high. "It just keeps testing me again and again." The hardest strike this time, seizing the chance from the soldier to not even thrust his sword forward for his defense, hence splitting his right shoulder into a deep injury. Madhavi wavered abruptly at seeing the running stream of blood. She immediately restrained her strokes and instantly called for the medical help. "Forgive me. I did not realize. I just did not," she kept reciting while sending the wounded soldier away with the healing assistant. "Weapons do not belong in the hands of women." A smirking voice vibrated from behind Madhavi, which she instantly recognized whom did it come from. She did not turn around. He came closer and stood in front instead and throatily gurgled, "I mean, what belonged in the beautiful hands are the most precious jewels, the gold bangles studded with the glittering diamonds." His mean eyes fell on her bright face, whereas Madhavi stood stately as an irresistible charm that radiated from her within. With her deep breath and burning hard stare, it seemed she wanted to rip his mucky mouth apart downright then. "I wish nothing to prove to this wretched evil follower," she thought to herself, and then turned around, leaving him alone, simpering all by himself. An unusual calm befell at dusk on the lands, gradually slipping into the embrace of an odd, whimsical darkness. A delighted ray trickled out of horizon and swiftly raced into the hazy shadow, piercing through its bosom. Slowly and softly it alighted on the peak of Surishila first, and then spread all around with a brisk, brightening mountain sides, wilds, trees, pools and streets, and then gently entered through the windows of Surishila court, tenderly illuminating its walls, pillars and floors. The court looked immensely fascinating, as its grand ambience was embellished with the complementary colors alike, the game of chess with its reflection of surreal exterior. The soft white satin drapes flew across the casements. The seats around was cushioned with a combination of black and white wraps, and the table at the center was inhabited by the majestic square board of chess with its affluent, lifelike pieces. Vishnukarma, who had been standing beside the board since the morning wee hours, staring at the pieces as if imploring them to safeguard the grace of kingdom, took a deep sigh and murmured, "Today's game is certainly not going to be merely a game, but more than that, more than just an amusement for the spectators, more than just winning and losing pieces." Then he gently placed his index finger on the white queen, his eyes deeply fixated on it. "Hope you save our king from falling into its deadly trap, for that is what it surely is." Then he thought of Rudra, whom he had sent for the rescue of sages of Manipit Ashram from savage robbers of Kudaha Hills, who would be a great threat to life of the sages and their families. They would not only rob and snatch foods and goods from the holy sages, but would take away their cows and cattle, and even their young boys for keeping them as their slaves, who would cook, serve and clean for them. The sages had implored King Vajraveer for helping them with the security squad in order to get rid of these savages. Thus, as per Vishnukarma, Rudra was the most apposite option. Eventually, the court started to get studded with nobles as they entered, flaunting the silence of the court. They noticed Vishnukarma in awe to be already there as the first, but then bowed their heads to his respect before perching on their seats. In a short while, the entire court was well settled, all faces beaming in excitement and eyes lurking around as they were impatiently waiting for the thrilling game to begin. This exhilaration thumped their hearts louder with the entry of Ulkasur along with Gajradhan, who stormed onto the east-facing cushion in front of the board. Then entered the king. He received a collective hail from all the courtiers, ministers and nobles. He went close to Ulkasur, gave him a naive, sophisticated hug and said, "I so much wanted my friend to relive and spend some old beautiful moments once again, and here you are with all your glory and passion. not only for this game but also for our old times. Thank you, my friend, for honoring my code with such pleasure. But little did the king realize that he was knocking the wrong door and was expecting a predator to be his host. With all their exchange of greetings and reception, Ulkasur informed Vajraveer that the game would be played in one of their same favorite ways as they once played before, where each piece on the board represented something valuable or alive. For instance, a single pawn was equal to 40 young able-bodied soldiers, which will be won by the one takes the other's pieces. 20 mighty horses for one each knight, 15 royal camels for one each bishop, and 10 majestic elephants for each rook. For loss of the queen, the winner might ask to take or marry any royal young maiden of his choice from his opponent's kingdom, and on check and mate, the winner was entitled to take an important charge in the loser's kingdom. We rejoice as we play should be the very nature of the game. Nothing to lose but to add for each other's should be the spirit. And mingling to become one army and one nation should be the outcome when played amid two close friends. Announced Ulkasur, trailing his words through his sly grin with an imposing dexterity. Vajraveer paused for a moment as he tried to fathom his said words, but mystified by what he exactly meant, consented to his will, as he knew Ulkasur for a range of mischiefs. But he had never harmed him personally as such, and always thought of a faithful friend in him. Or was he just being blind to consequences? Those had been triggered already to him, but his ignorance was still prevalent. As they say, Vinashakale Viprita Buddhi, implicating as one's doom approaches, the person's intellect works against its best interest. He offered Trithas, means officers in charge of accounts, controlled by the Chief Minister Mahamadhya, of the Treasury, Record, Mines, Mints, Commerce, Excise, Agriculture, Toll, Public Utility, Armory, etc., to stand by their sides and chalk down all the moves and their associative transactions taking place during the game. The ministers got spread a large, thick, white sheet on a wooden stand, seemingly working as a blank screen. They drew the two axis lines, vertically and horizontally on it, and then horizontal axis was divided in 6 equal squares, which further was subdivided in 2 equal segments, categorizing one portion for black and the other for white pieces respectively. And then they sketched the 6 different pieces in one portion by filling the figures with whole black ink, symbolizing the black pieces, and only outlining the figures in other portion, symbols for white pieces, and after that lined up accounting from 1 to 8 on vertical axis from above the horizontal boxes. Offering the white pieces to Vajraveer, Ulkasur giggled in pretension of that typical kind of unalloyed well-wisher who would cunningly get the environment set as per his own will, and then said, "You are sitting in the just right direction, my friend, and here you go first with your lucky hands to honor the board. Oblige me to proceed only after you. However, your direction implies for the setting sun, and your sun is going to set very soon, my friend." Thought Ulkasur. Contrary to his words, his eyes narrowed viciously as his wicked thoughts wriggled in his grimy mind. Vishnukarma, sitting static as a stone, could easily sniff the rolling troubles. He did not even have to suspect Ulkasur for his evil intent behind playing this game. But now he really had nothing to stop this game, but to leave everything up to the role of destiny and fate. For if this game was to take something from the king, it surely had something to teach him as well, and unravel the hidden colors of his so-called close friend, who had actually been an enemy within for long. In order to attain divine wisdom, one must have supreme faith and devotion. Faith is therefore the most important qualification for a spiritual aspirant like Vishnukarma. Faith ultimately confers divine knowledge, which removes ignorance once and for all.